Hey, everybody. Welcome to this week's Post Political Podcast. I'm the host, Derek Britton, and I'm excited for our conversation today. First up, we got the sponsors, of course, the Vermin Supreme Institute, where we do education, politics, and public works. We try to help folks all around the country. We're actually looking at trying to start up a clothing and food drive, and also a kind of a showers and helping out with maybe some checkups and things like that for some of the homeless folks in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. So look forward to some of those projects coming up pretty soon. And also we have Brewed Coffee. I'm going to put my affiliate link in the comments here. If you want to, you are more than welcome to go to Brewed Coffee and check out. I tried their Kentucky bourbon flavor. It was incredible. So definitely give it a shot if you would like. And there's also a ton of different, coffee mugs and t-shirts and all that stuff as well. But today I'm really excited. I have someone local to myself in Massachusetts. He is running for city council in Boston, and it is Jacob Urena. How you doing?
Hello. I'm doing good. How about yourself?
Good. It's a little recalibration today. Yesterday was quite a day. The news was on for most of the day. Me and my wife were kind of looking on to see what was going on. There was obviously a lot of havoc in DC. We had friends that live as well in DC. Luckily, they were all okay. But how did yesterday kind of play out for you? And we'll get into some introductions and stuff after. I want to get your first kind of take on this. So
Definitely. I thought yesterday was a very eye-opening experience for a lot of Americans. I stated briefly earlier today how, for me, it wasn't a surprise. I was not surprised at all by what happened in the capital of Washington, D.C. That is just a result of what hateful tweets, speech, and actions do, and inciting the people to do such actions and commit such violent acts in one of our historic buildings in this nation. So I thought it wasn't surprising. It was something that we should have expected. It's something that in my eyes took a bit longer than what I thought it would take, because he's been in office for 4 years, and the president has been inciting this type of language for the last 4 years. And so I thought something like this would arise much sooner. But obviously we've seen yesterday how the extremes that we can take under a guidance of someone who doesn't care to oppress people or doesn't care to minimize people. So I think for a lot of Americans, it was a shock. For a lot of progressive Democrats, it was a wake-up call.
Yep.
For a lot of Democrats, it was also, like just general established Democrats, it was a wake-up call. But I hope that it was also a wake-up call for the Republican Party, so that they can see how far of an extreme, corrupt power can push people.
Yeah, and just for some inside info on folks that I know within like the Libertarian Party and even Green Party stuff, I saw a bunch of stuff pop up on Facebook and Twitter and all that stuff, the last couple of days, and there was a lot of kind of wake up calls to a lot of people, and a lot of folks, as well. Like you said, weren't really surprised. They had heard a lot of this rhetoric go on, and a lot of almost calls to action for violence and negative action, let's say, from the president. And I think it was it kind of reached that boiling point. I wish there was the same type of energy for some good things that we could have be accomplishing, or some good things that we could be fighting. There's a lot of negative things that come out of that building as well.
Mm-hmm.
And certifying an election that has gone through more scrutiny than any that I can remember since the Gore, hanging Chad election, I don't think is one of them. I think there's reasons to have peaceful protests. I don't know. I personally don't condone hurting other individuals or going to incite more violence. I'd love to see folks demonstrating their First Amendment right to protest, and doing so for a productive cause. I don't want to see something for, and at the end of the day, I think that was a lot of the the outcome were, thing that people were talking about is, what did this accomplish? They're it got news attention for sure. I think it further divided the Republican Party, and really you have to pick an old GOP or a conservative, constitutionalist, or whatever the old GOP stood for, or this new MAGA Trump kind of future. So yeah, I think it really woke some people up, and I think it's that part is a good thing for
Yeah.
sure. And I liked what you said. I did catch the video, and I'd love for you to kind of repeat it for our folks here about the kind of unity message of let's try and move forward and find a way that can be productive, I guess.
Yeah, I believe right now we're in a place where a lot of communities of color are also in a vulnerable place just because they see the dichotomies of how different protests are um, kind of apprehended by police force and by
Yep.
the National Guard and things of that nature. I mean, when we look at BLM protests that happened last year in the Capitol and the attention that was given to that protest versus this one, there's a lot of people in our community who are very upset.
Yep.
And this is just another example of, the extent and far reach of white supremacy. I went to DC for the commencement march last year, and I was there, and the amount of police force that was there in that crowd, you could not see yesterday at yesterday's event.
Right.
So I hope that this is kind of a real awakening for America to see how far we have gone from being great.
Yeah.
This whole "Make America Great Again" has actually just been a transition backwards to lessening kind of the view of how we are seen in the global eye. I mean, we had
Yeah.
prime ministers and governors and presidents from around the world tweeting, saying, praying and thoughts and prayers for America and what we've become and where we've gone. So we really need to unite as a people and really put our own agendas aside. I feel that that's one of the main issues when we look at all these protests and organizations that each have their own agenda and none of them communicate with one another. So
Right.
none of the action steps are actually done.
Yep.
I've said if organizations such as BLM and the Sunrise Movement and other organizations seeing how alike they actually are and
Right.
really put their own egotistical like wantings and really put the power of the people, they will see that they're actually all intertwined.
Yeah.
And they're actually all connected because when we talk about climate justice, we talk about racial justice, and when we talk about racial justice, we talk about all these extra other paradigms that mend us together. So we really need to unite as one people and
Yeah.
understand that we've lived in a context where we've been very siloed, where we've been there's been a dam that has been keeping resources, justice, equality, equity from our communities for so long that we really need to unite and as a united force finally break that dam down and let those resources really pour into our communities.
Yep.
Transition from talking about it to being about it. And I feel like that's where we are. That's where we need to come together, and that's the opportunity we've been given.
Yeah, and I feel like there's a lot of similar messages I try and do week to week on the podcast. I think there's opportunities the criminal justice reform is something I know friends and folks in the Libertarian Party are very passionate about. We were talking a little bit earlier, actually, the Aina Presley and Justin Amash came together on a bill for ending qualified immunity. And I think there are important steps that we need to take and kind of set our egos aside. If just because the person does not have the same letter next to their name when you go to vote that you do, doesn't mean that they're not fighting for some of the very same things that you want to fight for. Yeah. And right now, I mean, there's nothing more binding, and we might have different ways of getting to places, but we kind of are looking for a lot of the similar end results.
Yeah.
Healthcare is a big thing that unites a lot of people right now, and I think there is a very different approach from the Medicare for All crew and what the Libertarians really fight for in trying to break down a lot of the barriers that have been put up, and a lot of the I just think there's differences there, but at the end of the day, we just want it to be affordable for everyone to be able to go to get care when they're sick. Yeah. I mean, that's a very basic need right now in every community, especially with COVID going on and a national pandemic. I think there's some place there to work together and maybe meet some of the common goals without saying only this way is the right way or only that way
Right.
is the right way. If we make it less expensive through changing video for a second. Oop, did you come back?
There we go.
All right, sorry. Yeah, the video just cut out for a second there. Sorry. Yeah, so if not only one provider is creating this, the costs do come down, and then if we do have a program where it's more being paid for by tax money or anything like that, it does become more affordable at that point in general. So
Right.
I think there are creative ways to get there, and I think there are things that may be a compromise, but as long as we're heading in the right direction that both kind of groups are looking to, I think there's positive, productive conversations to be had there.
Definitely. I think we really need to readdress how we are dealing with a lot of these issues, because what we do is we participate in a cyclical kind of solution making with these cookie cutter solutions that we've been regurgitating for years.
Yep.
When President Trump passed the tax bill to give cuts to major corporations, this whole trickle down verbiage has been used for years.
Yeah.
And we have data that shows that it does not work. And so what we do is we continue these cyclical kind of cookie cutter solutions. And what we do is we really negate the people who are the sense of power, who are the center of power. And so we really need to really readdress how we do that together, really understand that this two-party system hasn't been working. What we have is right-wing conservatives and moderate Democrats.
Right.
So when we talk about progressive Democrats, the moderate base doesn't like them and the right wing doesn't like them. So they're, in a sense, not conforming to the general identity of the Democratic Party.
Right.
So what we really need to do is decentralize that, decentralize those two parties, and really make it open for the people. Let the people decide, and really push forward from there on, I believe.
Yeah, and I mean it's funny, you look at a typical if you looked at stereotypes for libertarians, you'd think a lot of libertarians support the tax cuts to these large. A lot of libertarians did not, because they were hurting the individual person. It is typically good to see when you can also cut the spending that goes behind it, but when you're just putting that burden on future taxpayers for the Federal Reserve is continuing to print money, you're not really helping people, and you're not really changing anything. You're just making it easier for your buddies who own big corporations to really get out of this. So it's interesting that there's a lot of stereotypes that I think a lot of groups have to break down as well, and realize that that people are individuals, and typically you don't have one person that agrees with 100% of anything, and B, that there are a lot of COINTELPRO or a lot of deep seated propaganda trying to push us to fight more. The more that we fight each other, the less that we can fight the political powers that be, that are really the ones that are hurting the general people in America. So no, I completely agree. I think there's a lot of, I loved your, like I said, I loved your unity message. I thought it was a great way to take something that happened that was negative and turn it into a wake up call and a positive to move forward in the right direction. So
yeah, I believe we've so far been stuck with these identity politics that we've fallen into, that we have not seen that there's not a party for the people. There's the Democratic Party for the Democrats. There's the Republican Party for the Republicans. And they will trickle down some bills and some things that will help keep the people sustained and complacent in specific areas. But when it comes to a party that is generally just for the people, if the people say in Boston that they want to, defund the police and get mental health professionals, there's no ifs, ands, or buts. The people have spoken. A general sense of the people have spoken, and so we need to work towards that. So we need to regain that way of working, of the democracy flowing. And I think once we do that, which is going to take a long time, I'm not going to say it's not going to be a one day to another, but it's going to take progressive leaders, and that could be Democratic, that could be Republican, that could be Libertarian, that could be the Green Party, progressive leaders who come and say enough is enough.
Yep.
My mother went through this, my grandmother went through this, her generation went through this, and we are still dealing with the roots of all of these systemic problems that we have.
Right.
And so we need to have people who come and say, great. There's a party that calls me, but I'm called to represent the people.
Yep.
The moment that the ideas of the party doesn't align with the ideas of the people, then there's a problem. There's a separation there.
Right.
And I feel that's where a lot of the distrust happens in government. So I think we need more progressive leaders to really put fire and flames under this and get this going.
Yeah.
Because the people in power just keep saying that they don't know how this is going to change, that we need to wait.
Right.
But they have no plan. So
yeah, and some of those folks have been in office for 40 plus years. And it's really just frustrating to see what we call a representative government represent very few Americans.
Yeah.
And I think there's a really, like you said, I think having a closer link to what the people want. And I think there's a way to do so without getting close to mob rule. You also don't want to go all the way to it's open democracy, vote on every single thing, because you can get some very scary populist opinion. I mean, look at some of the stuff that's been happening. Very, very scary. But I think that a closer tie to what people are actually looking for, you don't get to that really negative place, because you're having those conversations more frequently. You're not, being squeezed from every direction financially and health-wise. You know what I mean? There's just a lot of things stacking up, I think, on the American people, and the propaganda is doing its job. The marketing folks for the major parties are doing their job to push people apart and to create the separation, because they can collect a paycheck and work half the time. You know what I mean? It's just, I think there's a good way forward where we can really, spark some change and try and create a more representative, I guess, government for us.
Yeah, definitely. I think we definitely have a journey ahead of us, but it's something that we definitely can do. That's definitely something we should do, and something that the people have been asking us to do, and really, pushing forward. So I think, it's all looking at it in a balanced way where everyone's voice is heard. I think that's the primary focus that we must have. I know with me and a few other city councilors who are running, we, are very focused on making sure that, it's all to the people. The power is to those who get you elected. And so making sure that you hear their concerns and are vocal in their concerns. So we hold community forums and things of that nature, because the solutions that we need for the problems that we have aren't going to come from me. When it comes to, public health, I'm not a doctor. I didn't go to school to become a doctor. So I need to hear from people who are not only experiencing these things firsthand, but professionals who dedicate their life towards this, and really take them into consideration and hear them in policymaking. So I think we have reached a moment beginning in 2021 where we have been given an opportunity to shift the dynamic, to really begin the aggressive work towards shifting what American politics looks like in 10 years. And really begin to reshape how the rest of the world looks at us. I mean, if no one agrees, I mean, the last 4 years have made us a laughing stock worldwide. And we're talking about, we claim to be so progressive and be, not a third war country, and yet we are dealing with issues that third war countries haven't dealt with in 10, 15 years. And we're supposed to be the progressive ones, and we're supposed to be the developed ones. And so that example that we had in the early 80s, early 90s, where we were number one, we've fallen so down in so many categories that we can only talk about military and police funding. That's the only, and people in prisons per capita in the world. We're number one. That's what we're known for. We're known for keeping kids in cages and separating them from their parents, and losing the parents after, so we can't return. So we have a lot to work to change, and to really, we can't cover this up. We can't just say, oh, tomorrow's going to be better. No, tomorrow's going to be better because the work we do today is going to change tomorrow. Tomorrow being better doesn't have to do anything with fate. It has to do with the work that we implement now.
Yeah, and a lot of folks, it's funny, or maybe not, a lot of folks at the end of 2020 were saying this was such a horrendous year. This was so rough. 2021 is going to be better.
Yeah.
Well, it's not just going to get better if you're just sitting doing the same things you did in 2020, because that's what led us here. You really got to be taking some initiative and getting out and either helping folks in your community or trying to run for office, or helping someone that you believe in run for office. Change isn't just going to happen overnight, and I think I even think there's more to do, in the community as well, that
Definitely.
people can just helping your neighbor. I mean, it's a hard time right now. Everyone's work is not as guaranteed, or whatever. Even before this, it wasn't guaranteed. So,
Right.
there are people really hurting right now, especially. And what better can you do than help if you are in a place where you can, even just with small stuff, a set of groceries for a week.
Yeah.
That could be the make or break for that family. And I think, getting back to a place where we just help our community a lot more gets us 10 times better than where we are at, right now. And I'd love to see us get there.
Yeah.
But hey, we jumped right into the first part. Let's hear a little bit about you. I want to get a little brief, how you got here, how what sparked you to run for city council in Boston, and how's the campaign going? It's early on a little bit, but you're kind of getting into it right now. So I'd love to hear how it's going.
Definitely. So, just to give you a bit of backstory about me and how I got into it, to give you a bit of backstory of my community engagement, I am in a religious office. I'm an ordained minister. So I was ordained at the age of 18, something that is typically unheard of under the community of evangelical and Episcopal churches. Usually the guidelines are for a later date and age, but exceptions were made. I don't know why. So I was ordained at the age of 18, and I've been fulfilling religious office, a lot of religious work when it comes to sermons and preachings and things of that nature. But the last 2 years, I co-founded a religious order called the Order of St. Martin de Porres, which is a socio-religious order centered solely on social and racial justice.
Oh, cool.
So instead of us being a typical familiar kind of congregation where you go on Sundays or Bible studies, a lot of the work we do is centered on community engagement.
Yep.
Centered on giving people bilingual classes to learn English, giving them credit building classes to build their credit, connecting them with home ownerships. We've led a few protests. We've had a few protests that we've actually led throughout the city in the last year with Breonna Taylor and George Floyd and the tragedies that followed there. So we've been trying to be very intertwined in civic work in a way that the church isn't really typically usually there for.
Yep.
A lot of the times we hear thoughts and prayers, but we don't hear that faith without action is dead. And so taking that part of action, what does that mean? Well, that means being there, like you said, for your neighbors. So for those who saw my announcement video or know me personally, always know that what my motto is that I keep is to love your neighbor as you love yourself. That's the motto I've taken while running for political office. And this is totally I'll talk about the separation between church and state later, but this is totally putting just to love your neighbor as you love yourself. And the way that I find to do that is to advocate for resources, to make sure that they have a healthy living, to make sure that they have everything they need the same way I would want that for myself.
Right.
So if we are to take that kind of mindset and implement it into politics, separate that sentence from religion, just take me telling you, love your neighbor as you love yourself, and implementing that ideology into politics, then you would have politicians who are always minded, their mind is always on the context of the people.
Yep.
And so that's how I really got into the civic engagement and really intertwined in the community with different organizations, leading the boycott for Faneuil Hall with Kevin Peterson and the New Democracy Coalition, and a handful of other initiatives like addressing methadone mile with the South End West Roxbury Community Partnership and other politicians involved. So I always try to be very involved because in the office that I was given as a deacon, we say that a deacon is the servant of Christ who washes the feet of the disciples. And so as a politician, I will wash the feet of my community and be there for them.
Yep.
But then I have this kind of a dilemma where I come from a religious community, yet I don't believe that religious dogmas have any place in politics.
Yep.
So it's kind of fighting that battle where people will be like, so what is your stance on things like abortion or same-sex marriage? And I go, I can have my religious views or my religious beliefs, but that has nothing to do with politics. Politics is a system for all people, Buddhists, Sikhs, Muslims, gay, straight, everybody included in there. And so I can't have a mindset where I'm going to implement my dogmas to fulfill my agenda. Right. So that always kept me kind of on the fence of running for office.
Yep.
And then we heard that the city council for the district I live in, Andrea Campbell, is running for mayor.
Yep.
And so then I had a conversation with my bishop, who I'm under, and we had a conversation on what do we want for the community, where do we see it, and we really wanted to continue the work that was started. We didn't want someone to come in and really dismantle the work that has been done in District 4. And so, after countless prayers and thoughts, I really put some thought into it and really decided that if this was something that the community wanted me to focus on, then I would do. So I held some community meetings and kind of got the word out. But, a lot of the inspiration for me is from my community, from simple people like my mom, who came to this country at 16, didn't know the language, didn't know where they were going to go, had to learn the language, had to go to school here, had to survive. I remember going to the, DTA office and being her main source of interpretation so that she could get all the benefits to raise 3 kids on her own. And so living that life and then seeing the life of my community, I can see how we have similar issues that really should be addressed and solved. Yeah. And so that really inspired me to move forward and continue this trajectory towards running. So that's how I kind of got into where I am now.
Yeah, that's a cool story, and it's good to see both. So I personally am not a religious person, but I do appreciate a lot of great work in communities that churches and religious groups do have. I think I have a very good friend of mine, a Green Party member, who also is running a church, a Unitarian church as well. And I talked to him a lot about how he is influenced by religion to do the good that he wants to see in the world. And, it inspires me as well. So in part, I'm inspired by religion, but I don't personally follow or believe, and it's still productive. It's still something that, I think is a great thing for a lot of people. I've never tried to say don't believe in religion to a lot. I think it's for every person to decide on their own.
Yeah.
And I think it's done some incredible things for a lot of friends and family that I have.
Yeah.
So I definitely it's just a personal belief of mine, and I respect the fact that you use it as a source of motivation and strength, but are able to kind of detach when looking at policy. I think that's a very inspiring way to go about it, and I think there would be a lot more folks that are maybe non-religious that would back folks that are heavily involved in church communities if they had that same approach. I think that's wonderful. So just my personal, that's just
no.
I think it's wonderful, the way you go about it and the way you've talked about it. So no, that's incredible. That's really very cool background and good way to come into this. So
definitely. And I still think that the Christian church in the U.S. has a lot of cleanup to do.
Yep.
With the dichotomies and separations that have been constructed with identity politics, right-wing conservative evangelical Christians versus other branches of Christianity. So there are areas where us as an entity of a church really need to get our act together. And as a minister, any minister who might be watching this and might feel uncomfortable, that's just the reality of what it is. We can't blanket it out. That's the reality of what it is. And so we really need to clean up how we deal with people and how we connect with them and the way that we express that to people whose beliefs aren't our own. And I think we have ways to go through there. But again, even within the Christian church, I've seen progressive leaders, young and old, who are coming and saying, these fundamental beliefs that you've had are great, but, they exclude all of these people. So how can we emulate this creator under the Christian spectrum that we believe is a God of love, and yet we exclude people? So we have our ways to go.
We've talked about before. I think there's a lot of good in looking back on what has been done, what has been done systemically going in the wrong direction, and what you can learn from that and kind of change moving forward. Just like politics, I think there's a lot of folks that would, a lot of things would break down as far as these huge negative influences in our lives if we just were willing to learn a little bit. And I think education, I think, is so important in general, not even just constructed formal education, but just going out and learning things on your own. One of the big things that I really liked looking through your platform and stuff as well was kind of the transparency and outreach, trying to get folks to understand and learn a little bit about local politics and who does what's the responsibility and what's being done. Boston is one of the probably maybe Chicago might be a bigger example, but of doing a lot of things behind closed doors and not really letting the public see what's being done and just kind of living with the consequences there. So can you talk a little bit more, I guess, about your goal for transparency and how you'd go about doing that with the folks in Boston?
I think what we need to do is we have for so long avoided ripping off the Band-Aid when it comes to a lot of these conversations, and we've become very soft correctionists. So what happens is we don't address things like, people don't like when I say Boston is a racist city. That's just what it is.
Yeah.
If we look at statistics, we are one of the top 5 most racist cities in the U.S. I have a very wonderful relationship with the Red Sox and the team. I worked for the Red Sox Foundation, but our team was the last to integrate Black players into the MLB. And so we have a lot of work that we have been trying to do to clean, that kind of reputation up, but we're doing it too lightly. We really don't want to rip off the Band-Aid. And I believe that without ripping off the Band-Aid, what we do is these incremental changes really don't solve anything. Right. And we're fearful of the result of ripping it off. And what happens is in the beginning, it's going to be uncomfortable. People are not going to like that you say Boston is a racist city. People are not going to like that you say Boston has a police brutality issue. People are not going to like that Boston has a housing issue. People are not going to like that you say communities of color are highly affected by substance abuse disorder and the city's not doing anything about it. And so a lot of these conversations really go under-answered or cookie-cutter solutions. And so if we rip the Band-Aid off as a city, my perfect utopia would be a next mayor coming in and saying, hey, as Boston, we've messed up in A, B, C, D, E, F, G. This is what we've done wrong. This is me being transparent to you, but this is where we need to move forward. We need to get rid of all of these things so we can move forward. And that conversation really needs to take place to really regain trust of the community. Because in Boston, it's not solely a race issue of a Black politician and a white politician. There's complacency everywhere. We have Black and brown politicians who are complacent. We have white politicians who are complacent. We have minority leaders who are complacent. And so it's not solely focused on just increasing the amount of color within City Hall, but really dismantling these things. And these conversations on defunding the police and abolishing the police are very hard conversations to have and very hard conversations to maneuver in. But, these are the conversations that need to take place. They're uncomfortable. People don't agree. There's going to be debates, but those debates can't turn to arguments. Let's leave them as debates and get constructive ideas from them. And so what we need to do is understand that, for an example, I was in a city council call for 4 hours before they let the public speak. It was on substance abuse and it was on Methadone Mile. For those who don't know, Methadone Mile is a mile of Boston that is highly populated by people suffering from substance abuse disorder. And all of the resources to help them is in this 1 mile. This then affects the people who live in this 1 mile area, and the community has their spins on it. And so we waited for 5 hours, given 2 minutes to speak. And so the people don't want a seat at the table. They want a whole new table. They want to dismantle these things that have kept them oppressed for so long. It's not about dismantling the police. It's about creating a police force that is for the people. Because the one that we've had, that we've inherited, has been the same since the times of slaves. And so if we create a new system, and we understand that the police system was instituted to catch slaves, and we say, well, we want to leave that narrative, then let's institute a new way of community policing in a transitional phase. This doesn't happen day to night, but these conversations need to be taking place, because you telling the community to wait is you telling the community to die. And we've been dying. Our families have been dying, not only in this pandemic, but getting shot, by police officers, getting maced, and all these other things. So we really need to be unapologetically transparent. You know what I mean? And that's why I tell my supporters, you vote for me because you like how transparent I am. If you don't like my transparency, then this is not the platform for you. But I'm not going to keep anything from you, because that's what you've been asking for. You've been asking for transparency. So, I think we really need to rip that Band-Aid off and really be as progressive as we say we are.
Yep.
We have our mayor leaving now to
Yep.
serve in the Biden cabinet, and we have a whole bunch of issues that he left us here with. I mean, that's just the reality of it.
Yeah.
We could have Marty supporters and Marty not supporters, but that's just reality. We have a plethora of issues. Marty's heading to Washington, and now our new mayor is going to have these plethora of things on the table.
Right.
How do we resolve this? We resolve this by being unapologetically transparent and letting the people unapologetically hold us accountable. That's how we do it.
No, that's great. And that's great to hear. I think there's a lot of room for growth there. I think, I think there's been some good work with community forums and things like that have definitely increased some of the transparency, but there's still a lot that's decided on and talked about behind closed doors that just the public does not get to see or hear. And I don't think every single conversation, it needs to be live streamed, but there just needs to be a level of transparency where you can ask the question and get a real answer, I feel like. And I think, one of the things that you touched on with kind of the reforming and defunding of the police, I think there's a lot of folks in, say, Green Party, Libertarian, I think this is a place that a lot of third party voters and progressive Democrats can really come together, and we're not going to have the same way of going about it. We're not going to have the same goals, but if we come to the table and say, these are what we do care about, and we can accomplish all these very easily together, because if we get to this point, we accomplish the things that the Green Party wanted and the progressive Dems wanted and the Libertarians. Well, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think we just need those conversations, because fighting in the police union in Massachusetts is going to be very, very difficult. And B, we need the ability to kind of rip the Band-Aid off and really say, no, this is the way it needs to be, and have that kind of support. It is one thing to go incrementally and try and get the more people changing their public opinion by doing forums and things like that. But if you already have a large base of people that are already ready to sign up and say, I'll fight for this.
Yeah.
Why not mobilize and just put aside your other beliefs that you don't agree with and say, let's fight on this thing together, because we all believe that this will be a better tomorrow for all of us. Even if everything that we believe in is not the same thing that everything that you believe. You know what I mean? I think we just need to have those conversations and really get together, because there is a strength in numbers approach. And I think we have it if we just include more people in those conversations.
And I feel like people don't understand that that's how the system thrives. By creating so many distinctions between groups, that you're so isolated and focused on your own thing, that's how it thrives. It keeps you busy.
Oh, yeah.
You might get some incremental change, but it keeps you so busy that it's minuscule change. So, it's going to take us all coming together and really having a change of mind to really understand that we are all intertwined in this. Every issue is important. Everybody has different outlooks on it. But if we could actually just come together, and look each other in the eye and come from a not egotistical, but a really wholesome place for the people, there can be incremental change that happens. It's going to look different in Boston than it looks in Chelsea, than it looks in Quincy, than it looks in other states. So some states might not, there's rhetoric of abolishment of the police that that doesn't thrive in that state. And that's okay, as long as the department is a reflection of the people who live there, not of a people, but of the people who live there. So I think a lot of conversation needs to take place district by district and really hear what the people in each neighborhood is saying. We have differences in Mattapan than in Dorchester and how people consider police and how they connect with them. So we really need to dismantle this table that has been raised for oligarchs and really make a table for the people that they can come together and say, this is how we feel. We will support you in this as long as you get this done.
Yeah.
And that's just how it is. And there's so much more we could talk about, limits in the Senate, limits in Congress on term limits and all this stuff that needs to be implemented. But we have to begin locally. Yeah. And once we shift that dynamic locally, then our representatives locally who go to the Senate, who go to Congress, and who serve in these platforms will be able to represent us better.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I completely agree. And like I said, I think there's a lot that folks of different political backgrounds can come together and really fight for a common good. And I think there's a lot of folks that are willing to do so. It's just, there is going to be some logistical issues, even just trying to reach out to folks. But I'm going to try and call on, local party members in Boston and in Massachusetts in general to have those conversations, because I think it is the only way forward in a system that really is stacked up against third parties and even outliers within the major parties. So
yeah.
One of the things I want to make sure we get to, because we're coming up against it now, is you are doing an event I think is really cool, and I'd really like to hear you promote it and hear a little bit more about it. I saw the Facebook event, and I'll let you kind of talk about it.
Sure. So in running the campaign, one of the main tasks that we felt was very important for us was to really teach the people what it is to be civically engaged. May that be through social media graphics that we post or events that we hold.
Yep.
And so what we really thought was, in the next upcoming week or so is Martin Luther King Day here. And a lot of people don't really recognize the history, the links between Martin Luther King and Boston. And so what we as a campaign are doing and undertaking is also starting these projects to really inform people and really teach them. Win or lose, I think one of the things that we are really focused on is making sure that the people are prepared and educated for the next 5-10 years. So we will be taking a tour of Boston, following the steps of Dr. Martin Luther King himself, and telling a bit of history and kind of the trajectory that he had here in Boston. So we'll be visiting all those landmarks, and we will be broadcasting that tour live on Facebook and over all our social media platforms, so that people are able to reuse this information. They're able to share this information, and this will just be something for the people that we as a campaign feel is necessary to kind of give to the people and really engage them in that sense. So we'll be having that tour take place on January the 18th at 1 p.m. via Facebook. Tune in. It's going to be a live video that we'll be broadcasting.
Yeah, and I'll share it on the post-political community page. No, I think it's great. And I personally had that, like you were saying in the introduction there, I didn't have a big link between Martin Luther King and Boston. And I'd really love to, I'm going to watch myself, because I'm very interested in seeing what those links are and kind of what he's done in the city. And I think it's really interesting. And I like history in general, so I'd love to take a look and see what it's like. So. Like I said, we're kind of up against it now. So if there's anything more you'd like to talk about, is there a place we can donate to the campaign? We can throw it in the comments to make sure that folks see it. And if they want to either, volunteer for your campaign or contribute, we'll put the links in the comments. But say I'm off now, and that'd be great.
Sure. If you'd like to know more information about our campaign for City Council in District 4, you could visit jacobforboston.com. That's our website there, and get some more information. All of our social media platforms are Jacob for Boston, for our Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and Snapchat for our young millennials. We are on Snapchat. And all of our links to donate are there as well. So we are currently looking for volunteers to help us in the campaign, and people to become founding donors. So if that's something that you would consider, look us up.
Great. Yeah, and like I said, we'll post the links in the comment section. I always go back in and fill everything in there as needed. But this was great talking to you, Jacob. I'd love to talk to you more throughout the campaign as well, and either have you on or have you share some stuff in the community. We have the post political community group page that we share a ton of stuff from all different political ideologies and stuff. So it's really a good place to have some good conversation and to engage with people that you might not, have in your bubble, I guess, or the silo, I guess, that we were talking about before. So, no, thank you very much. I really appreciate you coming on and having an open discussion. I know, like we said before, we're not perfectly aligned on every single thing. It's great to have conversations where we can be productive and really help the city of Boston become better. So I really appreciate you coming on.
Definitely. It was a pleasure being on, and thank you for providing this platform.
Of course. Yeah. Have a great night, and I will talk to you soon.
See ya.
All right. That was Jacob Urena, and he was running for Boston City Council. Like I said, I will put all of the links in the comments after we're done, and you can go to donate or volunteer for his campaign. These smaller local campaigns are very, very important in your everyday life. They're typically much more directly impactful to your life than the president is. And I know a lot of folks focus on those kind of big races. But at the end of the day, the people working in your community to try and make your community better are going to have a much greater impact on your everyday life. So if you can, I know it's tough. Times are tough right now, but if you do find yourself able to, donate to Jacob's campaign or volunteer. And I hope everyone enjoyed tonight's podcast, and I hope it sparks some conversations. Maybe you're not from local in the area in Massachusetts or Boston. I hope you guys have conversations between different parties and really try and find where you can align, maybe supporting a ballot measure to decriminalize marijuana or sex work or psilocybin or something like that in your communities. I think those are all causes that multiple different political ideologies all follow. So please give us some feedback in the comments. I'd love to hear from folks as well. And I hope everyone has a great night. Thanks.